another night, Friday night, actually, of Smoke and Mirrors Radio Hour. I'm Jay Weidner, and thanks for listening. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight. I have on the line from beautiful South Africa, Jan Lampbrecht. How you doing, Jan?
Hi there, Jay. I'm fine, thanks. And you?
Oh, it's great to... I'm doing great. It's really great to talk to you. We're going to be talking about his seminal work, which is going to be a little bit strange, but I actually do have a reason for this. I've been studying alchemy and ancient alchemical texts for a long time now, and they're always peppered with these references to a hollow earth and to caverns under the earth and beings that live there. And, of course, the Hopi Indians have similar stories, as do other indigenous folks all over the planet. And so I've always been interested in it. I never believed it, but just interested. And then I found this book by Jan Lampbrecht from South Africa called Hollow Planets, a feasibility study of possible hollow worlds. And for the first time, I found a book that actually treated the subject with some respect. And it should go out from the beginning that, you know, guys like Sir Edmund Halley and Sir John Leslie and Leonard Euler, and a lot of other people actually entertained the idea that the Earth was hollow. So we're going to run through some of the theories and things, and then we're going to talk about this incredible book, which is the most scientific approach to that idea of a hollow planet that I've ever seen. So, Jan, I think you did a great job. I think you just kind of maybe have ended all discussion on it because it's such a thorough examination. You know, are you familiar with the two Russians who came up with a theory about the moon being hollow? I think in the early '60s.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved that book. When I was a kid, it was one of the first paranormal type books that I bought, and I absolutely was fascinated by that. And I never forgot that. And that was one of my motivating reasons why I went and started digging into this subject. That was the first book on that made me think of those things. And then later on, I ran into other texts. When CompuServe, prior to the internet arriving in South Africa, when CompuServe arrived in South Africa, I started learning more about all these other strange ideas, and that just got me so fascinated, and that's how I ended up writing this book.
Yeah, you're referring, of course, to the book, I think, Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon.
Yes.
By Don Wilson. What a great book. That book's probably like 200. Go ahead.
And it's still sitting on my bookshelf next to me.
Have you read the sequel to that also?
No, I didn't know there was a sequel.
There is. Oh, it just went up about $100 on Amazon, I bet. Yeah, there's a sequel that's even better in some ways. Yeah, he wrote a sequel about a year or two later called, I can't remember now, but I'm sure you can type it in on the internet and find it. Yeah, Don Wilson, I don't know whatever happened to him, but he was a great writer, and that was a great book. And, by the way, most of what he discusses on the moon has more or less turned out to be true because I went and looked, and it was there. I mean, I've gone to NASA, and I've gone to Houston, and I've looked at the photo archives and spent years doing it because I wanted to find out if what Wilson was saying could possibly be true. And my conclusion is the moon is hollow, actually. I don't know if the Earth is, but...
Well, that was, that book of his was so good about the hollow moon that it started making me think when I heard people starting, when I discovered that this subject had been broached before on the Earth. I then thought, I kept thinking, well, if those guys thought the moon was hollow, then, maybe the Earth is too. And I want to point out a simple thought I had at the time, and that was simply that in astronomy they measure the masses of the planets relatively, because there's no way to objectively measure the mass of a planet. So all masses in the universe are relative. And so if they say to you that the Earth weighs X number of times more than the Moon, then it's just a ratio. So you need to keep in mind that if all bodies are solid, then that ratio would be the same. But if all bodies are hollow, that ratio would also be the same. And that was a thought that I had when I was busy writing this.
Yeah, and you did a brilliant job when you began to look at Mercury and Venus and found the strange, very strange things that have gone unnoticed for the most part by most people and most astronomers. What did you find on Mercury?
I need to explain something about Mercury and Venus.
Yes.
There was a astronomer in the British Astronomical Association. His name was Richard Baum. And he's actually a good friend of another very famous astronomer, Patrick Moore. You might have heard that name.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Richard Baum actually wrote several articles in the British Astronomical Association's journal where he spoke about strange observations that they had made through telescopes. And even though telescopes don't have the resolution of satellites, the fact of the matter is that telescopes are still a real-time device. And I actually managed, after a long search, to contact Richard Baum. And I wrote to him and I put his replies into my book. And I quoted from various articles he'd written, even in the later years of his life, where he said that there are things on those planets that just do not match up with what NASA is telling you. And an example would be the ice on Mercury. There were astronomers suggesting the existence of ice on Mercury more than 100 years ago. And it's only in recent decades that satellites have proven that there is ice on Mercury, and that they've done, I think they used radar to confirm that there is ice on Mercury. But what these guys were writing about were visual observations that suggested that Mercury had some kind of weather, which it shouldn't have. So, these are serious people. They weren't just playing around when they were writing these things, and they are highly recognized, So I still think that there is room for other knowledge.
Well, I do too. Just the weight of the lore here on Earth about some kind of underworld, and the Jungians, of course, will tell us it's psychological, but it is so weighty and so pervasive that you got to wonder at some point, how could every culture on Earth have these tales of underworlds and underworld creatures? And it's amazing.
I must tell you a strange story about the underworld. There was a book, and I'm trying to think of this book. I'm sure I mentioned it in Hollow Planet. It was a book written in the 1870s. It was called The Coming Race.
Oh, yes.
Have you ever read it?
I certainly have.
To me, that was one of the most bizarre books ever written. Now,
I agree.
The book is most probably good fiction for its time, because there were a lot of people who just said it was outright fiction. But I want to tell you about some of the consequences of that book.